Welcome to the BrainFriendly Reading Tutor Training Program. We are so excited to be here with you and share with you this information about how to help kids move up the ladder of reading. So a lot of you, from the registration forms that you've sent in and information that I have, a lot of you are in positions where you already work with children. Maybe you're a classroom teacher or an aide. Some of you work with children in other ways, but want to be able to do tutor training program. So in this program, and then we actually have a couple of people who are here as parents who are interested in having this information so that they can help their own child. So what's great about what you're going to learn is that it's applicable in many different situations. So this bucket of knowledge that you're going to create for yourself as we walk through this process, you're going to be able to use in a variety of different ways throughout the rest of your life, really. So you may be in a classroom now and 10 years from now decide that you are going to retire and be a tutor. That's okay. Or maybe you're in a classroom as an aide, and later on you move into a different position and you're able to bring this knowledge with you. So I'm Kristen Dwyer, and this is Elaine Smith. This body of work has been a collaboration of the years of experience that we have both had in classrooms, the extensive amount of Montessori training that we've had, the experience in those classrooms, public school classrooms. Elaine spent 10 years working in a large public school in Texas that had 1,000 students in it. And she was the person tasked with moving kids up the ladder of reading. It was her job to figure that out in the school. So she spent 10 years thinking about, how do I do this, and how do I do this as quickly as possible, and how do I gain, most importantly, the kids' buy-in to doing it? How do I make this something that they want to come down and do, that they're excited to come to and be able to participate in? So all of that work led us to starting doing dyslexia intervention the last 5 years, and spending really 5 years being scientific observers of really watching what worked with children, what they responded to. And we were working with the kids who are the ones that parents were willing to pay a sum of money to bring to us. So that meant that those were the children who weren't just mildly dyslexic, but the ones who were pretty significantly dyslexic. We spent a lot of time really thinking and analyzing what we were doing, our methodologies, our instructional practices, and decided about a year ago that we needed to do something different than what we had been doing. What we had been doing is working with kids one-on-one. And we realized that what we had come across, the strategies and methodologies that we were using, were really effective, and they weren't available because we had created them. Of course, we created them on the legs of really good, solid brain research. We had been invested in really looking at what is science telling us about how kids learn to read. And that informed what it is that we were doing with children. So the information that we're going to share with you today is a culmination of all of that. Incorporates the latest brain research, our own years and years of scientific observation of what works with children. And this particular format is designed to be used in a tutoring environment. So if you're working with your own child, it's a tutoring environment. And some of the things that we're going to teach you work really well one-on-one or with 2 children, and they don't work really well with 25 kids. So I've given you a little bit of my background. I have a master's degree in education, and really I came out of that, and I have Montessori AMI, elementary, and AMS middle school. I've taught 1st through really 9th grade in a variety of settings. And I found myself in the classroom really frustrated with not being able to help kids how to read, which is how I came to this idea that I would figure it out, because I felt like that was a gap in my learning, and I wanted to be able to figure it out. So fortunately, I had a mother who already was a professional in this field, and she said and encouraged me to explore that. So we did, and we have together. So we have a number of different services that we intend to offer. One is that we have a school program, and I keep referring to these people in the back. So those of you that don't know, this is a contingent of people from Holland Elementary, which is where we're currently implementing a school-wide reading remediation program that's having, I think, pretty amazing results in the classrooms where it's been started since September, and we're already seeing results in the other classrooms. So that's pretty exciting, saying, can we translate what we're doing in a tutoring environment to the classroom and move a whole classroom up the ladder of reading? That's really the goal of what we want to see happening in schools. So we're looking to expand that program. We obviously have a reading tutor training program, and we have a program that we offer to train other people who have nonprofits who provide reading services. We also do teacher in-services and parent workshops. Our two main priorities right now are the tutor training and the working in the schools, because that's our greatest impact. When I said before, we decided we needed to do something differently and founded this nonprofit, it was so that we could reach more children, because one-on-one we can only help so many, but in large groups we were able to help more. So the key components of our tutoring, as we talked about, is that we're addressing the needs of the children. And if you can't read all this, I'm going to tell it to you. This helps me to keep on pace. That we are going to address the needs of the children using the latest brain research that I was talking about. We're still going to use those multisensory methodologies, those hands-on, those visual, auditory, kinesthetic, tactile methodologies that work so well. And brain research says that's how you help information move into long-term memory. Our program provides for what's called over-teaching and over-learning. So they do some processes every time they meet with you, and hopefully they do them at home. And by doing that, they get in the number of repetitions that they need in order to help them retain the information in long-term memory. We use games to help it be joyful. We want our experience with the children to be happy, for them to feel positive. When kids feel anxious, they can't learn. Literally, their brain shuts down and they can't learn. We're going to use arm spelling. So for those of you who are familiar with arm spelling in Orton-Gillingham, we're going to use it for both reading and spelling, but in a different way. We're going to use that same technique, but in a different way. And we're also going to approach the sound symbol connection using a multisensory methodology. So think like preschool classrooms, the people in preschool class, and this is all overview. So we're going to touch back on all of these things again. But think about a preschool classroom where the letter of the week is T, right? And for a whole week, they study T. Well, if you're a child who's going to struggle with reading because of how your brain is wired, 2 weeks later, when you've done K and S, you have no idea what T said. T did not get moved into long-term memory. So our practices work with very young children, helping them to have the repetition they need to be able to literally rewire the brain. We're also going to use, the strategies we use help to alleviate that discouragement and anxiety. And the good news is that in our tutor training program, this isn't a one and done training program. A lot of programs you go to, you take the training, you walk away with your materials, and you go out in the world and you go, I'm looking at X and I don't know what to do with X. And we know that becoming a really great master tutor really requires coaching. I was fortunate to have a coach, and I believe in the power of coaching, both peer coaching and coaching from a master teacher. So we've decided to build into our training program group coaching. So when you leave at the end of this program, you are not on your own forever. As long as you want to participate in group coaching calls, be able to talk about kids you've got that you're not sure what to do with. Now I have a 12-year-old who can't read. I've only worked with 8-year-olds. What do I do with a 12-year-old? I have a boy who kicks me under the table. Anybody got any suggestions for what to do with a child who won't sit still and crawls on the floor? So we're going to be a support system for each other for how to help you to become the master tutor that we have in mind for you to be. All right, so let's talk just a minute about reading in Michigan. So I don't know how much of this you already know, but every time I look at these numbers, I feel sad. Because that number here where we're talking about the 54.9% of the kids, third graders, are scored less than proficient, that's a lot of kids. That means 1 out of every 2 children is not reading proficiently. That's too many. At Holland, when we went, there was more than 1 out of 2. And in a ton of districts, and we have 5,000 districts in the state of Michigan, there are so many districts that don't even meet that target. So something needs to change. We know it needs to change. There's a lot of people advocating in the state of Michigan for change at the state level. And they're working from top down to try to get legislation passed to change how reading instruction happens. People are working with colleges to try to change how reading instruction is happening in colleges. And we're working from the ground up. You're our grassroots, and we are going to just teach our program, have people use our program, and then talk about how well the program works, to demonstrate that those instructional methodologies that the people at the state level are trying to get implemented, that there's a way to do it, and we can show you how. Other people can too.
Well, I kind of just had a.
Oh, here. Yep.
I had a comment.
There it goes.
Okay. So my youngest son, he's in a public school because he just was really struggling, and he had to go into a public school to get the services he needed. So one of them is reading intervention, and the state of Michigan now is implementing, if they're not at reading level in 3rd grade, that they hold them back.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, like, and my child's already been like young 5, kindergarten, so he's 7.
Yeah.
In 1st grade.
Sorry, took this way.
Yeah, sorry. So now that I'm like just kind of dumbfounds me that I look at them. So there's a conflict between the Montessori and me, and then they're coming to me and tell me that your child's going to be held back, but I do have like the little loophole in that because he does have an IEP. But
right.
Anybody else, they're holding children back.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is learn about how to help children, right? So there's a lot of children at a lot of ages who need help, not just 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, but we have a lot of 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. There's other nonprofits focusing just on high school in Detroit with helping high schoolers to get the tutoring they need to bring people up to reading proficiency. Yes.
I was just wondering, this number of percent of 3rd graders in English, are these students who are native English speakers? Or are there also non-English speakers involved in that number?
It's everybody. Yeah, it's a catch-all, special ed, everybody. We as an organization, as BrainFriendly Reading, are looking at where can we have the greatest impact. And training you is part of our first step, to train people who might want a second career in doing this work and helping to train other people, to go out and do parent ed workshops through the parent network that not DPS, but DCPS has now. So there are avenues to be able to share this information, and we are on board. So if you have ideas and places and things that you're thinking about as we go through the training, feel free to talk to us about that during breaks, afterwards, during the week, whenever, it doesn't matter. All right, so I'm going to breeze through this because we're not going to spend too much time doing theory. So in a lot of we could spend a long time. You could take a college level course talking about the statistics, talking about brain research theory, but we want to provide you with an overview of that, resources that you can access outside of class, videos that you can watch, things you can read, and spend the majority of the time in the class for us to practice the actual skills. Our goal is for you to walk away from this training feeling like confident you're ready to start tutoring. In fact, you're going to start tutoring before you walk away from the training. So hopefully, we're going to ask you to. You have to take the baton that we offer. So this is what it looks like statewide, and then you look at Detroit and you're at 11% of the kids reading. That's the lowest in the state. Everybody goes up from there. The group of kids that they're talking about, that 3rd grade group, is also the group of kids for whom the state of Michigan invested $100 million in early literacy. So they spent a lot of money, but the results didn't change. So that clearly is not, more money is not the answer. So what has to change? What has to change is how we teach the children, that we need to use a different curriculum. What if kids aren't reading and it's not the kid's fault? What if kids aren't reading and it's not the teacher's fault? So our narrative is something's wrong with the children. They come from a broken home. They have parents who never read to them. They didn't go to a preschool. And if we don't use that narrative, we use the other narrative. Oh, the teachers are jaded. They just don't care. They're not trying. They don't have the skills they need to do it. We need to figure out how to fix the teachers. Teachers don't need fixing. And the kids don't need fixing either. What if all that needed to change was how the children were taught? We know that's true, don't we, ladies? When we teach the children differently, then the children learn. You're not any different. Well, you're a little happier because your kids are reading more, yes. Right? Like you show up with like, oh, I have some tools in my toolbox that actually work. Are the kids happier too? Yeah, the kids are happier too and so proud to show what they can do. So when we change how it is that we're teaching the children, then everything changes. You're going to get the secret sauce about how to do that in this training. The third piece is you. What needs to change? In the state of Michigan, we need to train an army of people who are skilled, highly skilled tutors. That's you at the end of this training. And then you can go out and you can help those children who are suffering. Really, truly they are. So how do we need to change our instructional methodologies in Michigan? We need to use evidence-based techniques, which means using the latest science around reading. And we know from the research that research is being done all over the world right now about how children learn how to read. And all of that research is converging. So you know the most important part about research is that it's replicable, that somebody did a study here in Michigan, somebody did a study at the University of Alabama, somebody did a study at a university in Switzerland. And that all of that neuroscience converges, saying the exact same thing. And those are the strategies upon which, or the ideas upon which this training is built. So we're going to use a convergence of the research to point us in the right direction. And we also want to use methods that have been highly successful. So if you look at the graph, you can see from the graph that the blue line is the national average for reading since 1992. And then this purple line right here is Wisconsin. And Wisconsin is a state that's like whole language. They're what Michigan is doing. Or balanced literacy, doesn't really matter. They're kind of the same, all in the same boat. And Wisconsin has said, we're not going to change how we teach reading. We like how we teach reading, just like in Michigan. We like how we teach reading. This is how we teach reading. We know how to teach reading. I've been doing it this way for 30 years. And that's how we're going to do it. And the numbers stay flat. But there's a lot of states that are adopting practices based on the research. And two of them are here. You can see that that is Massachusetts and this is Florida. And when they adopted a structured literacy program, which is the fancy name to say what it is we're doing, what happened to their numbers? They jumped, right? So there's places, lots of places in the country where people are using different teaching practices and getting amazing, what look like amazing results. But really they're just following the science and doing what is the kids' need. We're meeting the kids' needs for how they learn. And what's exciting about that is that the compelling evidence, and this is from Jan Hasbart, she has a wonderful, if you're a person who likes to watch videos to learn, she has a wonderful like 60-minute keynote speech. If you Google science of reading on YouTube, there's about 4 or 5 different things there that'll pop up, and hers is one of them. And I loved her statement here, that the conclusions from the reading research is that compelling evidence from a convergence of reading research is indicating that 90 to 95% of all students can achieve literacy skills at or approaching grade level. That's what the research says. Repeatedly. That's the vision. The vision is that if you're at 74% reading level, like Farmington Hills, that's not great. That still only means that 3 out of 4 children are reading. So we want to approach this level of proficiency with the kids in the programs where we work. This is an infographic I made for schools that I'm just going to touch on, and you can have access to that and read it at your leisure. But what it says is that there's 2 different things up here. One is that the House bill that Rebecca was talking about, the 3rd grade reading law, that the 3rd grade reading law actually explicitly tells districts that they need to focus on these things. They need to focus on phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Our program touches on all of those in a tutoring environment. We also looked at this one wonderful piece of paper that was given to us through Holland, and you guys, I think, did a in-service on it. where it was a document that a task force created in 2017 saying, what are the things that schools need to be doing in early literacy in order to move their kids up the ladder of reading? And it had wonderful things in there that match what it is that we know needs to be happening. But the piece that's missing is the how. So we know they need phonemic awareness. We know they need phonics instruction. We know that all of that's going to help them become more fluent. But how do you do that in the classroom? What does that look like? What am I supposed to do to help them to grow those skills? So this document that was created that has all of the information in there about what's good to do with children, we have also available. Here's the piece that drives me. The piece that drives me, because I have worked with children who didn't know how to read, and I didn't know how to teach them how to read very well. And it would keep me awake at night because I would think I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and yet I don't know how to do what it is that this 4th grade child needs to be able to learn how to read. That what I would always think about is that reading is a door, and reading opens doors. Reading is a skill that opens doors. When children can read, then they have opportunities. When they can't read, they miss out on opportunities. And having large populations of people that are functionally illiterate has a lot of consequences. And the statistics are so compelling that the number of children who end up in juvenile care, juvenile court, in state prisons, in drug rehab programs, who are functionally illiterate is so high. And it makes me ask the question, what would it look like if all those kids had been taught how to read? Would it change the entire trajectory of their lives? I'd like to think it would. I like to think that if you could read, you could make different choices. You still might end up in prison. You still might end up in drug rehab. People who read do. But what if it were so that we could dramatically change what's happening on a big picture societal scale by teaching kids how to read?
We're going to talk about the ladder of reading. Some of you have already seen this before. This was created by a woman. Her name is Nancy Young. And she put together this infographic, and she has a structured literacy program. Structured literacy programs are they're many and varied across the country. People are putting them together just like we are, based on the needs that they see in their communities. But I love this infographic because it really gives you a good idea about those numbers that we were just talking about, so that you can really see where kids fall in reading. That about 5% of the kids learning seems effortless. Those are the kids that I just heard say, oh, they were 4 years old and they started to read with by themselves with no help.
Yeah, because when they work on a little app on the computer, or the parents point to the letters and say the sounds, they remember the first or second time the teacher in preschool maybe is teaching them, or the parent at home, and they put it together.
That next group of kids, that 35% that are still in the green zone, they are still reading pretty easily without a tremendous amount of instruction. And they're probably kids who would have learned how to read regardless of how they were taught.
This is the group that can intuit the patterns in the language. So they learn the sounds easily, they intuit the patterns, and after they've read a word about 3 times, they've got it for life.
The next group of kids, that orange zone, that 40 to 50% of kids, they are struggling to learn how to read. They're kids for whom they need specific instruction. And we call that instruction direct and explicit, that they're not intuiting the patterns that Elaine talked about. They don't see the patterns that you would hope they might see.
These are the kids that try to remember the words, and you work on them to remember the words. And a lot of times they can pretty much memorize a set of words. But unfortunately, the memory bank runs out at about second grade, sometimes as late as third. It just tops out, and they're stuck at that grade level.
Right. And then that's when people start feeling confused. But he was reading okay. He seemed to be doing all right. And then they hit that plateau and they're really hurting, and people are wondering what's wrong because they seem to be doing okay. It's the bottom group of kids that are more easily identifiable. Those are the dyslexic kiddos.
And those are the ones that you work on those letters and the sounds, and you work on them, and you work on them, and they seem to disappear. And you thought you worked on them, and you do it some more. And they don't really blend well. They don't rhyme. They don't, a lot of times they don't blend at all. Some of the kindergartners I'm working with have been worked with, the same as the others, but still not blending, still not rhyming, because their brain just isn't wired yet to do that.
But we're going to rewire brains literally with the work we do. We literally grow neural pathways. So that bottom part, the red and the orange zone, for whom those kids need a structured literacy approach. They need direct and explicit instruction. They need the over-teaching and the over-learning. They need to do it using all of their senses, using multisensory pathways. And that's true for kids who are dyslexic. It's true for kids who are just struggling readers. So it's not even really necessary to identify a child as dyslexic in order to say these kinds of instructional methodologies that you're going to learn will work for them.
So what we say is, depending on what population you're working with, generally 15 to 20% of the children have some dyslexia characteristics. Now, in that bottom group also includes children with other developmental reading problems, for which this program could help them. But, you know, I'm not, even though I taught them, I'm not expert in that. I've had some college training in it, but I don't consider myself expert in that. So I just wanted to say that there is that group, and some of those children are the ones who are pretty far on the spectrum. They do need a different kind of reading instruction, to the point that I won't take them, you know, under my wing, because I don't have that instruction of how to handle the spectrum that's needed.
And that just goes to the point that we're very careful to say that it's easy to say this program works for all children. But if you're really conscious about the fact that there's a huge variety of children, there is a population of children for whom we're not saying going to stand behind like this program is the thing for all children. But it does work for those children for whom reading seems like an unexpected difficulty.
So in this school where I was the reading specialist with 1,000 children, and I was seeing a good 15 to 20% of them, and they were making progress. There was like 2 out of the 1,000 who had the other reading developmental. One of the autistic kids came along great. One, I couldn't move at all. And then another child had another kind of reading, developmental reading program. And I could dance and I could sing, and nothing was happening.
And her dancing and singing is so good. All right, so this ladder of reading is available to you as well. So some of these infographics I'm going to show you throughout the training. If you decide you want copies of those, to be able to use those, to be able to talk about these points with potential clients, teachers, other people that are in your network that you want to be able to share about this learning, and you feel like an infographic would be helpful, we're going to print some and be able to make them available to you. All right, so we want to talk about how the brain learns.
So we know that the brain learns with electrical firing of different parts. This is the brain research where they actually look inside the brain with different kinds of imaging techniques. And these, when you work with any child, they're going to continually build new neural pathways for whatever you're teaching them with, and we call that learning. when a child, I also taught in a reading program, which was very interesting. It was in a sheltered foster care. They had just taken the children away from their parents. They were really angry and really sad and really very upset. And I thought, isn't it interesting that my regular dance and sing is not working? These kids are so anxious. And so I had to come up with all different kinds of ways to get them focused on something besides their anxiety and their stress. So telling a child that they're just not trying hard enough, if they don't get with it, they're going to fail, and all that kind of talking that sometimes parents do. Because teachers never talk that way to a child, but they would come to me and they were actually shaking. They were so unhappy in the regular traditional public school, and I'd have to go back and tell the teacher, just don't say anything to him anymore, just let me handle it. And then he learned how to read and went back in and didn't have stress anymore. They need water, resting, healthy food. Okay.
I made this slide clearly. So there's other components to it, right, which is reducing the stress and anxiety. That's the big one. But what else helps the brain to be able to learn? Water is key. Dehydrated kids and adults don't learn well. It's fascinating research around that one point. And then, of course, rest and eating a healthy diet impacts the brain. But the key piece there that's left on there is to say that the brain can grow. That we tend to think of the brain as like you're born with whatever intelligence you have. But what we know now from MRI imaging is that we literally can grow our brain in a variety of ways. And we basically have an unlimited capacity to continue to grow our brain. So we always tell the children, the work that you're doing is growing your brains. The teachers at Holland have heard me go in their classrooms and tell the kids, you are building neural pathways. And they're like, fancy words, don't know what those mean. But we're talking about that idea that they're not just doing it to do it, that they can't see the muscle of their brain growing, but they literally are laying down track. So this is a little YouTube video that we're trying to figure out how to share. There we go.
But it can't do it alone. It depends upon lots of microscopic cells called neurons. Over 100 billion of them, in fact. That lets messages flow backwards and forwards between the brain and body. Each neuron has tiny branches that let it connect to other neurons. When you're learning things, electrical messages travel from one neuron to another, over and over. Eventually, the brain starts to create connections or pathways between the neurons, so things become easier and you can do them better and better. Creating these neural pathways is how you learn and remember things. So, the more you use your brain to create these, your brain is responsible for your feelings and emotions too. It's normal to feel all different kinds of emotions: happy, sad, worried, or stressed. One of the things that we know for sure is that our emotions have a big impact on the way we learn. Feelings of stress or anxiety can make it very difficult for someone to learn. When you feel threatened or worried, your brain is programmed to trigger the release of chemicals such as adrenaline and cortisol into your body. These chemicals quickly alter the way you think, feel, and behave, making it difficult to think clearly or take in new information. Scientists believe that we learn best when we are happy and relaxed. That is when our brain processes information most efficiently. There are other physical factors that can affect your brain's ability to concentrate and learn effectively. The brain requires water for creating neural pathways, so being dehydrated can mean that your thinking will be less effective. Not having enough water in your system can also lead to a rise in salt and increased blood pressure, which in turn can cause stress. The brain also needs the right balance of proteins, fats, vegetables, carbohydrates, and sugars to work efficiently. So, maintaining a balanced and healthy diet is important for effective learning. If you have a diet that is too high in sugar and food additives, you'll probably find it difficult to concentrate well, and it might even affect the way you behave. Other things can have an impact on your brain's ability to work efficiently. When you're tired or hungry, too hot or too cold, it's unlikely that you'll be able to concentrate effectively on learning. Sitting still for long periods of time can affect your ability to concentrate and study. It's good to take brain breaks and physical movement or exercise. This will increase the oxygen in your bloodstream, which will help the neurons to fire. Many people believe that a person's intelligence is fixed, and it is not possible to become smarter. In fact, our brains are constantly changing and creating new neural pathways. This means that everyone is capable of learning and becoming more intelligent. There's lots you can do to make sure that your brain is healthy by creating the best conditions for learning. Firstly, the more you use your brain, the more efficient it will become. Challenge yourself in your learning. Be ambitious, set targets for yourself, and make sure that you have an imaginative and an inquiring mind. Stimulate your brain in different ways. A combination of audio, visual, and kinesthetic learning is often the best way to take in new information and learn new skills. Remember that your emotions play a big role in how well you learn. It's best to avoid studying or trying to learn new things when you're stressed or upset.
And that YouTube video covers a couple of different things that are super important that we're going to address throughout the training, which is you can't tutor a child who's stressed or anxious. Kids who come to you for tutoring will be stressed or anxious. They will be. They wouldn't be coming to you for tutoring unless they were stressed out about their reading. If everything was going really well with them in reading, their parents wouldn't be dragging them to go to a tutor. How many kids want to go to a tutor? Well, mine do, because they love me. They want to see me. One of them asks her mother, can we go twice a week? No, I'm like, I'm too busy. But coming to see a tutor means that that child is under stress and anxiety. So your first job is to establish rapport and create a situation in a learning environment where the kid is going to be happy and be willing and cooperative.
They come discouraged. I interviewed some of my children yesterday where I tutor, and they told me that first of all, when their mother brought them to me, that they didn't believe that I could help them. And and then mothers would admit later they didn't believe either. But and they would tell me this after the child was total reading.
So now it's time for the story.
Stay right there. She has a story she wants to tell you. So how this is going to go is that I know you want the story. So just hold your story. She has a story that she wants to share with you that is about the 3 parts of the brain, and that's all you get to know right now. But hold on to that, because you're going to get to practice your own story today about creating your own story that you would tell a child about the brain and how it works. So this information that we just learned right now is very helpful. And I forgot the other piece I was going to tell you about it. The stress and anxiety using multisensory techniques. So in that video, it's on YouTube. You can go back and rewatch it again. The components that are in that video are in the training program too.